5 minutes. James Daly.
Thank you very much, Mr Davies. Can I first of all congratulate the Honourable Lady on securing this very important debate? Can I also say that I agree with absolutely every word that she said in respect of this? The voice of individual MPs in different parts of the country is so important. I have a large Kashmiri diaspora in my seat in Bury. Through the general election campaign, the most important issue for that section of my population, who are the friendliest, the most entrepreneurial, the most positive, decent people that I've had the pleasure to meet, was this issue of Kashmir. And it came back to this issue about human rights. And that's what I want to talk about today. The first speech that I wrote, Mr Davies, won't surprise you, was far too long and far too wordy, and it was a history lesson that we don't need to hear today. What we need to concentrate on here is this, in my view, is that this is a human rights issue. I was lucky enough, and I'm lucky enough, to be an officer of the APPG on Kashmir. And the APPG on Kashmir seems like a long time ago now, but in February, March of last year, went to Kashmir. I went with my honourable friend from Hyndburn behind me, Labour members also. And the reason why we went, and I hesitate to speak on behalf of my friend, is it is not enough in terms of my constituents. When I was speaking to them during the general election, in terms of saying, yes, I can read in a book about this, I wanted to go to the front line to actually ask people who are impacted and affected by this crisis and by this ongoing human rights disaster what was going on. We, as one example, we went to a refugee camp in Courtley, and we met, and I met, and all my parliamentary colleagues met, people who'd suffered the most grievous injuries, who could tell. And we're talking about hundreds upon hundreds of people, not people who were just there in a queue provided by some political organisation, who told us as individuals that these appalling acts are happening. Now, my honourable friend, when she talks about the lockdown, is absolutely right. This is a lockdown that is not like our lockdown. This is a lockdown that it attacks the very fundamental rights that we all take for granted here. And as a country, the government, quite rightly, have expressed in the last few days their views on China's treatment of the Muslim population in that country. What we must do is take a similar stance, I believe, in respect of Kashmir. We must be putting the quite obvious human rights abuses at the top of our agenda. We have thousands of our fellow citizens who are from a Kashmiri background, who have family members there, who on a daily basis are impacted and affected by the acts that go on. I, as a lawyer, I've got a long list here of human rights abuses, but things like detention without trial. There are people in Kashmir who have been waiting 15 years for a trial. 15 years. And there's not a word from the international community in respect to this. Torture is commonplace. Young people disappearing. Yet we don't see this on the television screens of the Western world. We don't see this on the BBC. We saw recently, quite rightly, the issues in Hong Kong and other places. But Kashmir, these are people that we represent, these are our friends, this impacts their daily lives, and we must take a stand. So, all I ask in respect of the very excellent Minister is, and I know how committed he and this government is to standing up to human rights abuses throughout the world, that whatever our relationship with countries, whatever the political dimension to this, we cannot be deflected from the task of working with our international partners to come up with an appropriate way of protecting the interests of children. My own friend, the appalling stories I've heard of rape and sexual violence against women, absolutely appalling. As an international community, working with our European partners, with President-elect Biden in America, we have the opportunity now, I think, to come up with an international programme through the United Nations which is going to give succour and hope to those poor people in Kashmir who for 70 plus years have been going through the most awful, appalling hell. Now there's always the temptation in all debates to blame this person, to blame that person. What I would like to finish off in my 30 seconds is say, we can draw a line in the sand here, we can join together on a cross-party basis, we can be united by our determination to help anti-Muslim persecution in Kashmir. We can be united in our desire to protect human rights wherever they are in the world, but certainly in this region, which is the geopolitical issues here, perhaps the most severe in the world, 2 nuclear powers. And therefore I welcome this debate. I know my government is committed to human rights. I know the Minister is. And I welcome and thank all colleagues for their contribution. And let's all stand and do this together again and again and again.